because I think Harvard's a disgrace. I think what they did was a disgrace. They're obviously anti-Semitic, and all of a sudden they're starting to behave. They have $53 billion in a fund, and yet they want more grants. And it looks like we're not going to be giving them any more grants, right, Linda? And, a grant is at our discretion, and they're really not behaving well, so it's too bad. The students they have, the professors they have, the attitude they have is not American, and I think you should. A grant is a grant. We don't have to give grants. Exactly right. So we'll pull back the grant. All right. Very good.
Well, that was Donald Trump talking about his war against Harvard, and he is absolutely losing it at them, as we've been covering, but now escalating it to the next level. And there's a lot, I think, that we kind of understand that top line part of this, but there's a lot deeper and historical context that I think will help us better understand what's being done here and the potential for horrific ramifications based off of Trump being obsessed, whether it's with universities or with media outlets, whatever, or with billionaires, with punishing people who won't do exactly what he wants because of his dictator fetish. And to discuss this, I will bring in Brittany Page. Brittany, thank you for bringing this info to us.
Thank you so much for having me, Luke. I was expecting the "it's Brittany bitch" drop, so I was like hesitant to answer right away because I could hear it in my head just without it even being played.
It's Brittany bitch.
There we go.
There it is.
We just like to keep you on your toes. So break this down for us, kind of give the audience the context. I know we've been keeping up with it, but good to be refreshed. And then the Nixon of it all.
Yeah, so related to the attacks on Harvard University, there's new reporting that as of this week, a federal anti-Semitism task force notified Harvard that $460 million of the school's research grants are being cut. Now, this is really a significant amount of money, obviously, and it's going to cause so much harm in many different areas, and we're going to get into that. According to the reporting that you have pulled up right there, the Trump administration is following through on threats to terminate $2.7 billion in federal grants and other funding for Harvard University. This is going to impact the origins of breast cancer, the impact of nutrition on fertility to antibiotic resistance. I mean, we're talking about life and death things here, and researchers who have dedicated decades of their lives to researching these issues to find cures to things that kill many, many Americans. And so while Donald Trump is weaponizing his government against universities that he doesn't like, claiming that it's because of anti-Semitism, as we know, he has stalked his administration with people who hold racist views and anti-Semitic views. We recently talked about that. And so this really lands in a way that doesn't sit right, not only for the damage that it's going to cause, but also it's just hard to buy that the punishment is because of quote unquote anti-Semitism at these universities. So you brought up an important point, though, and this is related to NPR's latest reporting of Trump essentially going full Nixon, because there's a historical precedent here of the government, of a president using his power, weaponizing things like the IRS to go after organizations or people that he doesn't like. And according to NPR, former President Richard Nixon laid the groundwork for this kind of behavior 4 decades ago. And one of the things that he did was he considered threatening the tax exemptions of universities. Now, what does that sound like? Does that sound like anything that's currently going on? I don't know. He was nervous, Nixon. Angry, at universities for not cracking down on Vietnam War protesters. Wow. Again. Yeah. That's crazy. Does this sound familiar?
That's so crazy. Trump has similarly complained about Harvard and other Ivy League schools not doing more to silence protests against the war in Gaza amid administration crackdown on anti-Semitism on college campuses. Again, we have to call out, we all want to, which is why we did the other segment today, talking about the anti-Semitism within Trump's administration. We want to oppose anti-Semitism. What this is about is not that, though. This is about Trump's power and control over universities who won't follow his every directive. And honestly, it's kind of a bonus in their mind that they get to cut off more funding for crucial research because they're already doing that on their own, separate from Harvard. And we're covering every day the consequences of that in the name of cost saving, despite them being totally willing to blow up the debt for their tax cuts for the rich. They are cutting necessary investments. And now this is an extension of that to literally, as you said, life-saving research.
Yeah. And there's also an element of this. I mean, in that reporting, they talk about how Trump posted on Truth Social that he's going to take away Harvard's tax exempt status. So he has made this claim that he's going to do what Nixon previously threatened to do. Nixon also wanted to target his enemies specifically, like audit individuals that he considered to be his enemies. And this actually reminded me of something that our mutual friend, our mutual content creator online, David Pakman, has actually talked about publicly in videos where his attorneys have warned him that one of their fears is that the Trump administration could come after progressive content creators related to their taxes by doing audits and things like that. So this is a fear that a lot of people have right now. And after Nixon left office, according to NPR, Congress did pass laws to protect the IRS and taxpayers from political interference. But obviously, like so much of what Donald Trump does, he's now kind of testing the limits, testing the boundaries of those laws. And in some cases, as we're seeing, just completely disregarding it all. Sorry, I reacted to you zooming in on the face there.
Just briefly, this quote is so impactful and frightening. Trump's inspiration, I guess. Nixon told aides about a potential IRS nominee, "I want to be sure he's a ruthless son of a bitch, that he will do what he's told, that every income tax return I want to see, I see, that he'll go after our enemies and not go after our friends." It's as simple as that. And that's the playbook that Trump is using with the obstruction of the Paramount Skydance merger for the sake of getting him to be paid in form of a settlement by Paramount, and to admit defeat on that battle that he's waging against their First Amendment right to handle the interviews the way that they want to. And that's how he's handling this as well with the tax exempt status and with the funding. He wants his administration. He doesn't want any independence of any of the institutions. The DOJ, I'm sure you saw the reporting, but Stephen Miller is apparently making a bunch of the calls, and Pam Bondi just sees herself a little bit more as a performance actor, but it's not going to be her who's actually making the big DOJ decisions, which again, progress we had made with the IRS, with the DOJ, is allowing it to operate in many ways without the influence of an extremely political actor like we're seeing now Trump destroying.
Right. And there's another element of Trump weaponizing the IRS, which is making a deal with DHS and ICE to share data about undocumented people who are obviously paying billions of dollars into a system that they can't benefit from, that they can't draw from. And that's also something that is unprecedented. But, you know, Harvard has sued the Trump administration to try to reverse these cuts. And even if the current cuts are restored, researchers are saying that the future federal funding, they're afraid for what might happen there, and that Donald Trump's proposed spending plan is still going to cut the budget for the NIH by 40%. So any way you look at this, it's very disappointing and it's very scary for researchers. And I actually saw this really powerful interview with a researcher who is talked about in the reporting that you had up previously. And her name's Joan Brugge, and she is in the final year of an Outstanding Investigator Award from the National Cancer Institute because her lab identified altered cells that could be the origin of breast cancer. So this is like very significant. I mean, anyone watching this who has personally been affected by breast cancer, I'm sure there's countless people. And she is someone who could really make a difference here. And this is an interview she gave on PBS with Laura Barone Lopez talking about how this is going to harm her work.
Is ultimately cut off. What effect would it have on everyday Americans and the work that you and others do at Harvard?
There would be a really significant delay advancing all of the research findings that we've made to date. And so this, would slow down the development of therapies, depending on how long and how broadly these cuts are applied. But there are a lot of other consequences, like the reduction in research funding would reduce the pipeline of disease impacting discoveries from U.S. academic institutions to pharmaceutical companies that then translate the discoveries into treatments and cures for diseases. So industry relies on these discoveries. We would also lose our competitive edge and leadership in the world. Laboratories in other countries would have a significant competitive edge if the discoveries are made outside the United States. There's also obviously economic implications, not only from the loss of revenue from the treatments, but also from the enormous research income that comes to companies who generate the reagents, supplies, and services for academic research. And a major concern is that we're going to lose our best and brightest scientific investigators, the young trainees, to other countries. Some people aren't going to want to pursue careers in biomedicine with this uncertainty in research funding.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and we're seeing that too. And even scientists not even wanting to travel to the United States for fear that, they get here and their phone is searched for criticism that they've made of Donald Trump. I mean, that has happened. So many researchers are saying they don't even want to travel here, let alone work here, let alone come here, study here, try to find cures here. So this has consequences down the line. And that's really what is scary. I mean, there's so many things, right? It's an hourly 5-alarm fire with this Donald Trump administration, and there's so much that is drawing our attention. But this is one area where I think if people are personally impacted by this, if people understand that there's a political consequence to cutting funding for the National Institutes of Health for research that can find cures for breast cancer, and they're personally affected by these things, that's a potent motivator when it comes to voting, when it comes to getting involved in politics. And so I see this as one of the most crucial issues that people can be talking about so that they can understand the impact of Donald Trump's choices, his policy choices.
Brilliantly said. The real deal.
Thank you.
Brittany, everyone go subscribe to Brittany by searching Brittany Page on YouTube, or the link to her channel is in the description of this on our video that you're watching in this very moment. Brittany, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.